How's it going, guys? So today, mainly gonna be working on pipes with wigwags. We're gonna do a spoon, a full wigwag spoon first, which is actually something that I haven't done in a couple years. So I'm just kind of analyzing it for viability as a product. Does it look cool? Is it worth doing? So we're gonna try that. I have a couple projects that are specifically for people. I got a full wigwag mini that I went ahead and did all the wigwag stacking, which is what I'm going to be doing here ahead of time. So you don't have to watch me stack 10 wigwags on top of each other. This one's only going to be like 3 or 4. So we're going to do that. And then I've got a set that is going to be rather than a wigwag bottomed mini, it's going to be a swirled rainbow bottomed mini. And then matching carb cap and a dabber. So I'm kind of looking forward to the dabber. I think I'm just going to stack all the different colors that are in the rainbow wigwag and cap and everything, and then just kind of create little differentiations between each color. It should look cool. So that's that. And then I think we're going to try a hammer too. I've got the wigwags for it if we have time, which we should. So I think it's going to be a hammer, and I think we're going to even do a water piece. But that will also depend on the size of the chamber and everything when I am done. So that is the agenda for today's stream. And if it's like every other stream, I will finish that in like an hour and then have to come up with stuff to do. Probably not, though. I think I overplanned myself today, which is, I guess, a better problem to have. So those of you who have watched before have seen me do this. If you haven't, what I'm doing is I'm stacking wigwags on top of each other. And a wigwag is made from line tubing, which is a clear core of tube with color sticks surrounding it, and then shoved inside another clear tube, and then you basically vacuum seal it, so that it all comes out as one solid piece of tubing. But because of that, you always end up with clear on the outer rim when you pop open a hole. So in order to keep yourself from getting just a clear line between your wigwags, you always kind of have to tear the color that's on the inside out to the surface. On this, we're going to do our best to line up the wigwags. I don't know that it's going to be totally necessary because spoons end up having quite a bit of structural work done to them, so the wigwags get all stretched out and everything like that. But why not try? Always forget to turn off the computer sound. So with a spoon, because you do so much work to it, as opposed to like a rig or a lot of other things that you're just kind of puffing it out and creating smooth walls or distinct shapes. The spoon, you really are fundamentally changing every aspect of it. So when you even these out, which is the step I'm doing right now, you really want to make sure you put a little extra care into making sure that your tube is completely even, because you're going to be pulling at it quite a bit. And if it's not even, it's going to pull unevenly and look uneven. So taking the time to do that will be worthwhile in the end. So I'm starting with 2 smaller wigwags. I mean, a lot of it's to do with, like, I want it to be thicker and farther away from my clear before I add something really large. So once I have this evened, I'm going to add 1 more wigwag that's a little bit larger of the same color. And then I'm going to add a contrasting color that I probably should have picked out, but I didn't. And that contrasting color is going to be the front-facing wigwag. So when you look at it, it's going to have, kind of a window of a different color wigwag than the rest of the spoon. So now we're going to take our larger wigwag and add that on there. And because it is larger, it takes more heat, so I don't want to add that first. Otherwise, the process of evening out the large wigwag will actually cause my handle to melt, get too hot, and then it can start moving, and that causes all kinds of other issues down the road. So by getting a couple sections on there that are nice and even, but are also a little bit thicker and more able to more handle a little bit more heat than the clear, you are eliminating the worry of melting your handle. I guess more than that, it's also an efficiency thing. I'm mainly a production artist, which means that, I'm used to making the exact same piece 600 times in a row. So when you're doing that, the only way to get a raise is to make that piece quicker. And so by putting the 2 smaller ones on, I'm able to hold the heat on that thing without any kind of issue of it being off-centered a lot easier. And so that makes the piece get done quicker, and that means that you get more dollars per hour while working on the piece. So little bits of efficiency are kind of super important in what I do for a living. And obviously that doesn't extend to everything. If I'm really going to put my all into an art piece, I'm going to take as long as I'm going to take. Hey, JJ. But there's being an artist, and then there's paying the bills. And if you're going to do both as the same job, you get to make lots of things you don't like. We have a photography studio and gallery in town, has a bunch of my work, called Arc Valley Digital Imaging. Oh, yep. My Sunday alarm that I never shut off because I can't remember. But they always said it's kind of the same thing. They get to do a lot of artsy stuff, but then they get to pay bills with like school photos and rafting pictures and stuff like that. So it's not always the glamorous stuff that actually makes it work. All right, almost there. So once we do that, I'm going to dig around in my Boxo wigwag and find a fun one. That's a good contrast to this. This is kind of a fire to blue. Really, it's more of an orange to blue. This was actually a custom pole for someone who wanted a full wigwag mini, which we'll be making later on in the broadcast. So when I get one of those, I tend to then use the remainder in random stuff. All right. Box of wigwags. Yeah, I feel like we're doing Rasta. So we're going to use the Rasta wigwag. Preheat this because I didn't plan ahead. The Rasta one really doesn't need to line up because it's supposed to look contrasting, not like out of place, but it's supposed to look contrasting to the piece. So this is not going to be a huge spoon, but it was also a test piece. But it should be cute. Whew. All right, one more, and then we should be all nice and evened out and ready to do our structural work. So the goal with this piece, and we'll see if we actually achieve it or not, is to have a nice big chamber with a tiny little bitty stem. So it'll be a nice little guy, but it's still got a good enough sized bowl to be, enjoyable. All right. So you can see there now we got 4 sections. 3 of them are the blue, and then the cap is Rasta. So now we'll add a handle to the front and get ready to pull down our stem. So I'm going to use just the bottom 2 wigwags to make the stem. And those are the 2 little ones. And I don't want to just go yanking down on them. I want to get both of them super hot and then pull down nice and slow and evenly. And that way you'll still maintain a nice thick stem, because you don't want it to be small and thin and all kinds of weirdness. So just spend some time letting the bottom 2 wigwags soak in the heat. Once they're pretty good, go ahead and pull it down. Didn't pull down perfectly evenly, so we have back, find our thick spots, pull them down, and keep doing that along the length of the piece until everything is nice and smooth and even. All right. Now we'll make the mouthpiece. And all you're really doing there is heating up a section and kind of pushing together slightly. You don't want to push together so much that it forms a disc, but you just kind of want to gather it up on itself. And I'll give it a little puff to kind of give it some definition, but not enough to thin it out. And then we're going to heat right where the color meets the clear and pull that down so that that will define the actual whole of the mouthpiece real nicely. Just like that. So now I'm going to carefully start heating at the base of what's going to end up being my bowl piece and work my way towards the wigwag. It's taken a minute because I had to adjust my stem a little bit. So I don't want to crack the piece by heating too close to the handle too quickly. Because unlike some other kinds of work, if it cracked at this stage, it's going to look bad. period, just for the rest of its existence. All right. So now we're going to get the remainder nice and hot, and then we're going to blow, kind of do a tilted blow so that it comes down on itself and kind of discs out, and that's going to be our bowl. So the reason you're holding it up is kind of gravity is one of your main tools. So by holding it at an angle and blowing into it, gravity's pushing it down, and my breath is pushing it out, and that causes it to disc. If I just hold it straight, it'll turn into a perfect bubble, which actually isn't the shape that you want when you're getting the spoon. I thought it was for the beginning of my career, but it's actually kind of a disc is a much better shape. All right, so we'll give it one puff, see if we can get it to shape out nicely. Because this is so thick and we're changing the shape so significantly, it takes a couple times of heating it up, blowing into it, letting it disc out, and so on and so forth. I can never quite tell what's like completely on camera. But I'm pretty sure like up here isn't. All right, so one more should do it. Get me the shape that I'm looking for. All right, so that's the shape we're looking for. Got cold marks here for some reason. Melt those away. And then we'll go ahead and pop the hole for our bowl. I'm going to pick a spot 1/3 from the front to the back of my disc. Whew. Spoon is apparently very thick, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but does take forever to blow the hole out. I do one push to kind of define where the bowl is going to be, and then heat up all around that and to do a second push. All right, got our bowl pushed in there. So now the rest of the stuff is pretty easy. Going to define the bottom. Pop out the rush hole or carb, whatever the hell you want to call it. Because it's so thick, I'm going to use the full push to kind of plug that hole. Woo, that is definitely thick. There it goes. And then we'll add some grips. All right. Then we'll just melt those in. And I got those melted in. So if you're new here, you know this. If you're not, then I will tell you. All the products that I'm making, I'll have pictures of them on my Facebook, as well as a little short video tomorrow. That's just a slideshow of everything that we make, so you'll be able to get a better look at everything that we do here today. And it's all for sale. Well, most of it. Some of the stuff today is already sold, but it's all for sale, effectively. So if you see something and you like it, go ahead and hit me up. Happy to make another one for you or get you that one if that one was unspoken for. All right, so I think we're going to get started on the set of, it's a mini, 10 millimeter mini with a swirled rainbow bottom, carb cap, and dabber. So we're going to get started on that set. So first we're going to do the mini. All right. Yeah, okay. So, first thing we're going to do is pull down a point. First thing we're going to do is straighten my handle because my last point kind of sucked, apparently. It's a little better. Now we will pull down a new point, and this is just sectioning off the size piece of glass that I want to work with. And that point also kind of sucks. That's all right. I'll fix it on the next one. The annoying thing about pulling points is a lot of times, like if you screw up the first one and it's not great, then the second one's going to be not great, and then the third one, and then the fourth one. So get your first point pulled correctly. Make life easy. There you are. All right, so now we're going to add a handle and pull down the neck of the piece. Make sure you let that handle center. Seems obvious. Sometimes it's not. The more centered everything is, the happier you will be in your glass blowing endeavor. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and form our neck. So I'm looking at the top, half to third of the piece is what I'm going to use to form the neck. Get that nice and hot. And you actually want it to start condensing. The neck pull is not the same as a point pull. You actually want this to be a very slow, methodical, careful pull so that your neck is nice and even and also thick. Very similar to a spoon, pulling the stems with a spoon. Got it nice and hot. Slow, deliberate. If you got weird spots, you can hit them with the flame. Weird spots can be like anything. It's either too thick, too thin, the angle's slightly off, it's not perfectly centered. Like there's 60 million things that hitting it with the flame for 2 seconds can fix. So weird spot, technical term for the day. All right, so now we're going to push in our mouthpiece, which is going to be a Maria. All you're doing, heating up a section of glass, push it together nice and evenly until it gets a nice disc. Then we're going to heat above the disc, let it condense down, and then use our angle marver to shrink the hole in the mouthpiece in the final thing, and also at this point recenter everything to your left-hand handle as best you can. And then we're going to add our next Maria. This one should be right where it stops being all the same thickness, where it goes from thick to thin, and that is going to help you define your neck. Like visually, not in any, serves no function, just makes things look nice. All right, now you are going to bring the flame carefully to where your handle is. You don't want things to crack. We're going to take off our handle and pop open the bottom. All right, so now we're going to pop open the bottom and add our swirl. You don't want that hole to get too big. Grab our swirl. and attach it to the bottom. The swirl I did ahead of time, it's basically the same as a wigwag, whereas instead of putting it into a V, which causes that, I just spiral it. So you want to melt that in and condense it and then kind of blow it out so that it's even to the bottom of your piece as best you can. It's going to be color versus clear. So it's not likely to be completely even. Clear always melts quicker than color, so like it's less dense. So getting that to be as even as you can is kind of the goal. Now we're going to heat this entire piece up, making sure that we go down and hit that color every once in a while. Once it gets to the right temperature, we're going to kind of lean down and blow into it. And that's going to help define the first step of our beaker shape. You've seen this before if you've watched before. This is kind of that all or nothing step where it either works or it's kind of a pain in the butt to try to fix. So take your time, get it nice and melted before you do your droop. All right, so that came out nice. Nice kind of straight walls. So now we're going to heat up the bottom and then invert it and blow again. And that's going to be the second major step in defining your beaker shape. So now you can see it's kind of a nice swoop to a bottom. All right, so next I'm going to heat the bottom and then blow. I have a graphite pad over here that's it's just shorter, so it helps me do this. I'm going to heat it up, blow into it, and spin it while all on the graphite pad, and that defines the bottom and blows out your edges real nice. So now it's got a flat bottom. So now we're going to let that bottom sink in. And I'm just holding it at an angle and heating the center, and gravity is kind of letting it droop into itself so it forms a cup. Use that on the pad to straighten your piece. Now, once you've done that, it shouldn't wobble at all. It should now be a nice, you can just set it down and it'll stay. So now you pick a spot, the spot that makes the back look best. It's not really a defined thing. You just have to look at it and decide, okay, if I put my female joint here, it'll make this piece look best. In an ideal world with the ideal piece, it doesn't matter where you put your female piece. It'll look the same all the way around. I do not live in that world. So always do the best you can, make it look as nice as possible. All right, so that is the chamber of our piece. Toss that in the kiln for a second and let it reheat. Thank you, Bob. It is a nice shirt. Okay, that should be good enough. So I made the female piece ahead of time. She wanted a 10 mil, so it's a little bit smaller than the ones that you've seen me do before. But yeah. So now we're going to grab a little tube. Yeah. And make our downstem. Heat around it. Let gravity droop it for you. Pop a hole on either side. Set that aside. Grab our chamber that we put in the kiln. Want to make sure we get it nice and centered. And then attach. And then we're going to melt around the entire tube and make sure it fills the little hole that we popped to put the tube in there. And then pull our tube off. Now I got the tube on the inside. Melt it in, and then we're going to pop it open through the tube that's on the inside there. Pop that. And then straighten your down stem. And I always make sure that it's actually touching the bottom of the piece. These pieces are not very big, so to make sure that the water doesn't, slosh all over and get in your mouth, that. And also just to make sure that you can use a small amount of water in the creation of this. Where's my thing? Welcome to the Watch Me Look for My Tools show. All right. Of course, my 10 millimeter grabber is nowhere to be seen. So I guess we'll do this a different way. I lied. Right there. Front of everything. I might need to clean my bench. I'm not saying I definitely need to clean my bench. Might need to clean it. Oh, I forgot how easy this is to do with 10 mils. So 10 mils just kind of fit perfectly. You just kind of like set them in and they just go. The 14 mil ends up having a lot more to it, so you have to like avoid discs and stuff. So all you're doing is just heating that up, touching the two together, and then you got to go all the way around and melt it in. This is literally the most important step of the entire piece. I lost like 30 freaking pieces before I figured out that you have to slowly go around and melt everything in completely. But looking back, duh, like glass that's not melted completely together perfectly is going to crack. Crazy concept. But exactly how long you have to focus and how much you have to melt those two together to when there's no stress was a little bit more extreme than I realized. And at the same time, you don't want to go too quick in this step and melt too far around, or your female piece will start to wiggle and you got to like put it back where it goes. Or worst case scenario, your downstem actually starts to move. And once that happens, you're screwed because you can't, there's no good way to fix your downstem right now. All right. So that is most of our mini. So the next step is just going to be to take it off the handle and bend the neck. All right. So before we do that, we're going to do the matching carb cap. So I don't use a tube a whole lot, as anyone who watches knows. But for carb caps, specifically the bubble caps, I kind of have to. Or I guess it's more work than it's worth not to. So I made this ahead of time, obviously. It's a pretty reasonable size wigwag. I've discovered I don't particularly care for just straight swirl caps. They look fine, I guess. I just like a little bit more work in the cap. So I matched it and wigwagged it, and hopefully she does not mind. It's kind of like the spoon, where so much happens to the wigwag between now and when it's in its final form that a little bit more work makes it look a little bit more fun. First, I just want to seal this to the tube. And we're going to even it up, even it out, and then pull it down. Should be good. Now we'll pull it down. You don't want it to be crazy thin, so it can be a little chunky, and that's fine. Okay, not that chunky. And even is nice, but not totally essential for this particular project. All right. I don't actually like having a 6 mil there. Switch that to a 4 mil. So now we will add our blow tube. We're going to heat up the center section and then puff it out for the bubble of our bubble cap. All right. Now we hit that bottom portion right under the bubble, and we're going to pull that down, and that's going to act as our little stem-a-digger. You want to bolt it down pretty thin and pretty abruptly. That way this will fit hopefully any banger that you can get, except for the extreme ones like frickin' 45 millimeter cup ones or whatever. So now we're going to pull a neck right above the bubble. It's not really pull so much as just kind of condense. Okay, with a little bit of a pull, but mainly condense. Let that cool. Now we're going to make a Maria. And this is what you end up holding on to while you're using it. So a little bit bigger is better. That's nice. Make sure you get rid of any cold marks. And then just like the mouthpiece of your Mini, we're going to condense this neck joint down so that the hole is smaller. Not a function thing, again, purely to make it look good. Because the hole that's in the that's going to be in the bottom of this piece is so small that, you know, the airflow is not dictated by this top hole. All right, so now before we take this off, you want to go down to the end and pop a hole down the bottom. I actually saw these off to get a nice clean cut end at the end there. But you don't want to create a vacuum by completely sealing the glass. So by popping a little hole in the bottom, it allows me in this step to, you know, take this off without causing the glass to be completely sealed. When it gets completely sealed, it actually sucks glass in as you heat it into whatever you're heating. Which will always ruin your piece, almost always. Of course, I'm out of 4 mil. Get rid of this blob on the top. Pluck open the hole. Heat. And then flatten against the side of your angle marver, or really just anything, just flatten it. Feels better in your hand. And then widen the hole. Well, not really widen so much as straighten and even it out. And you got your nice disc. And so there you got your bubble caps. Then I cut it like right there. And that kind of creates the down stem that you can swirl around in your banger. All right. So now we're going to return to the Mini. Take it off the tube and bend the neck. Go ahead and grab it with my Kevlar pad grabber things that may or may not be grill tongs with sleeves. Heat that up. Take off the handle. We're going to melt this. Same thing that we just did for our carb cap. Pull a chunk away. Open up the hole. Melt flatten. Straighten out the hole. That required a little bit more straightening than some, so if that happens, you can always just hit it again, reflatten. Now we're going to melt the neck. Get a nice big flame and just kind of heat all around where I want the bend to be. And then you're going to look down the line of your female joint so that you know your piece is bending perfectly in line with everything else. And then use your tungsten pick or whatever to actually melt it down. It's going to be a whole bunch of weird cold marks in the back there. Make sure you melt those away. Don't want to get it so hot that your neck bends or moves or does anything. There you've got your Mini. All right. So now we're going to kind of change gears entirely and do the dabber. So So I'm going to use the same colors that I used on the piece for the dabber. And I use a Roy G. Biv rainbow with some white and pink thrown in at the end. So that's what we're going to make a dabber out of. So at its core, a dabber is a glorified stick. So trying to make it cool without losing any amount of functionality can be a challenge. Also, because this one is rainbow, basically every color of the Roy G. Biv rainbow kind of sucks and is super boily and doesn't like to do anything that you want it to do. So you got to be careful with your flame chemistry and how you heat each of these sections to make sure that they don't bubble out and look all terrible. That's red. Now we're going to add our orange. Our orange is even more finicky of a color than red, because why wouldn't it be? Once I get through yellow, I think we'll be in good shape. Red, orange, and yellow all pretty much suck. Basically, any of the crayon colors, they're super boily. So this is very similar to the process of stacking wigwags, except you don't actually have to worry about the thickness of anything. You're just kind of stacking stuff on top of itself. There's a little bubble on there that I was not a fan of. If it's super tiny and like it's going to be more work than it's worth to get rid of it, I'll leave it. But if I can fix it, I will. So all I did there is really just pull the bubble out with clear. And now I just have to fill in the space that was left. All right, now yellow. Okay, so that yellow isn't that bad, luckily. Really, it's the orange. That orange is just a lot of work. All right, green. I was seeing if I had a brighter green, but I do not. So we're just going to go with a forest green, which is the green I use in the piece, but a jade green will stand out a little bit better sculpturally like this instead of in wigwag form. I'm trying to maintain the same thickness throughout the entire length of this dabber. You got to push in, you got to rotate on your angle marker over and over. Just try to maintain one nice smooth thickness all the way down. Use opaque aqua for our blue. So you can see there, it's kind of, there's nice distinct lines between each color. That is the goal. Purple. And then on mine, we do a white and then a pink. A lot of the white I have right now is not good for sculptural stuff. It's not bad, but it boils worse than anything else. So I have another white that I use whenever I'm doing like outside work, where it's not going to be covered in clear, and that's it's a Paramore white. It's really nice. It's a really nice white, but it just has much more limited uses. So that's why I have one tiny little stick sitting around that I'm gonna burn myself with. Thanks, man. And also, thanks for watching. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. So the glasses that I'm wearing, I actually have like multiple pairs. These are my regular non-shaded, totally fine ones. I have to wear these when I'm streaming because I can't read the computer with my Shade 5s. Shade 5s provide a lot more protection, and they're definitely what I use whenever I'm doing mainline production work. But my super purple googly eye glasses are what I use just when I'm streaming, so I can still read what everyone's saying. It's a look. And then pink. I've got kind of a peach and then like a pink. I'm gonna use the pink. It's like actually pink. Um, Even though I use peach in the actual product in the wigwag, but it changes slightly in appearance when it's through glass and when it's stretched thin. So this pink will look better gathered up and solid than the peach would. The peach will look a little more, well, peachy, but it looks more pink on the end there. So I wasn't 100%. I thought I was going to kind of like put a bunch of discs and stuff in it, but looking at it now, I actually kind of like it. So I think I'm just going to gather up and disc out, put a disc on the top. Actually, I think I'm just going to put a ball on the top. I think I'm just going to let that pink kind of ball up and have that be the top, and then we'll pull down the other side for the like point that you have to get for a dabber. So I'm just gathering this up at the end. And once it starts gathering to the white, I'm going to stop. Yes and no. It's part of a set, so the set went for good money. So I'm gonna set that in the kiln and let it warm up because I don't want to just go right back down to where the red was and pull it. It probably wouldn't have anything happen, but I'd be really pissed if it did. So I'm just gonna reheat it. All right. So the next piece, I'm going to go finish the dabber before we go on to it completely. But the next piece is going to be a full colored, full wigwag mini. Also for someone, it's a gift for Father's Day. So I did I stacked the blank, and so that's the blank that we're going to use. It's a really cool set of blue with some sea slime in there. It's real nice. But I got to make my 14 millimeter female joint, so I'm going to do that and finish the dabber. A lot of what I'm ending up doing when I'm working is just trying to minimize downtime. So knowing, sometimes you're going to be working on 2 or 3 pieces simultaneously and just trying to keep straight what needs to get done in what order so that your pieces have enough time in the kiln, but you're not left sitting around like twiddling your thumbs waiting for them to come out of the kiln. So similar starting process to the carb cap. Straighten everything out. I'm holding it at a downward angle because I actually kind of want this to droop a little bit. And while it will thin out the spot near my handle more than the rest, it's not going to really matter in this particular instance. So now we're going to pull it down. So you have to kind of eyeball what is going to be the right size for a 14 millimeter joint, and that's the thickness that you want to pull down to. You don't want to pull it down any more than you absolutely have to, like I just did by accident. So I stopped paying attention for a second. And then we're going to blow this out into the marver and get it to be as close to 14 mils size as I can, and then use tools to get it the rest of the way. The first thing I'm doing is just evening it out. And then I want to increase its size ever so slightly. This you actually want to be reasonably thin, obviously not super thin, but if it's too thick, it can have cracking issues when you try to fit it properly. So I'm plucking out the hole instead of blowing out the hole because I want it to be a little bit more even and on center. The process of physically making the joint will fix a lot of variation in that top part, but you want to, get it as close as you can to start. So I take my tool, check to see if it has any wax on it. If it doesn't, I take a second to get some wax on there. Then we're going to heat this up. You don't want to heat it up so that it moves at all on its own. This whole process, you want to be you causing it to move. And once we're in there, that's good. It's the right size. I'm actually going to condense it down and do it again one more time just to make sure. Good. Test the size with a 14 mil joint. Yep. Now we're going to create the rim. So I basically heat the top rim of this piece, let it condense down, and then use my tool to push it back out. You have to be careful when you do this not to let it condense too much, because if your reamer catches any glass on the way in, it can cause it to fold over, and that will look terrible and maybe cause things to crack. Let that cool for a second. You don't want to put your joint holder in too soon, or again, causes things to crack. Push into Maria. Move down just below the Maria, and you're going to heat this up, condense it down a little bit, and pull. And then work your way down to the end of the color. And I'm going to gather that up into a ball, and that's going to be the attachment point on the mini rig. This gets gathered back up. even it out, and then final shape. And you got your female piece. All right, back to the dabber. Now that it's all nice and heated up, we're going to add a handle to the other side where the pink ball is. Oh, first we're going to de-dust it. We're going to go down pretty much just to the red, maybe a little into the orange. We're going to pull it down carefully and slowly to a nice point. Pull it off. And then I always flatten the very, very tip. No, I should use my thing designed for flattening things. But I don't know where it is, so I'm not going to. And then just take it and point it one last time. And that makes a nice little shovel at the end there in case you want to get like a really big dab. All right, so now we'll tap this off. Heat up that's left and toss it in the kiln. Just having visions of me dropping this in the water. So yeah, that's actually gonna look really cool. All right. Okay, so I guess next is the full mini. All right, so here we go. So first we'll add a handle. You want this to be a semi hot handle, you're going to melt it off, so it can just be a full regular hot seal. And make sure you center it and spend some time centering it, because your whole piece is going to kind of be based on that. Now we're going to pull the neck. For this one, I'm basically picking the top 4 wigwags as what I've designated as my neck piece. So I want to heat all of those up, just like I had done on the Rainbow Mini set. You want to heat up a nice chunk of your neck. And it's also similar to how you do it on the spoon, which was our first project. You just kind of pick how many wigwags you want to heat and go. It doesn't really matter if you do it that way. That's just the way I do it. So the wigwag closest to my hand is probably going to be ever so slightly thinner. Closest to my hand. The tube, this one over here on my right, is probably going to be ever so slightly thinner than the rest, just because that was the first one that was used when I was, creating this. That was the first one I put on there. And so that one oftentimes is slightly thinner. So I can do a few things. You can focus your heat and let it condense on it. You can focus a little bit less heat on there so that it will have the same base heat level as the rest of the ones that are a little bit thicker. I kind of do all of the above, and then usually end up coming back and hitting it with the flame after we pull the neck to really make sure that it's even. So once again, neck pulling is what you're trying to do. Nice and evenly and slowly. So everything's nice and hot. Go ahead and pull it. Real slow. So you can see how it's a little bit bulbous on my right hand up at the top. So I want to hit that. And a surprisingly little amount of heat is going to cause it to thin itself out. So I'm just trying to even the neck to make sure it's nice and straight. And even wall thickness, which I think I've got. So now we'll let that cool for a second. And now we're going to make our mouthpiece. So we're pushing a Maria in. I don't want to waste any tube, so I want it to be pretty close to the top of where the color meets the clear, but not so close that the color or the clear actually like becomes a factor in the piece. So that was pretty good. Get rid of the cold marks on the bottom. Let that cool so it stops moving. And then condense the whole. Make sure you're back on straight point. Now we're going to make our second Maria to finish the definition of the neck. Because this is color instead of clear, and a wigwag no less, which means that it's just super stressed out, you gotta take a little extra time before you start pushing, and you have to spend a little extra time after you push your Maria in, making sure that your cold marks are not there. There's just a lot of stuff happening when you push a Maria into a wigwag piece. You gotta take into account how that affects the glass. All right, looking good. Now we're going to work our way down towards the handle. Again, I've been working this piece for a little while, so I don't want to just go right to the handle and hit it with the flame. I want to work my way down. Whew. All right. So now I'm going to get this whole thing screaming hot, and we're going to do that where I droop it, blow, bring it up, blow, and then do it again on the marver. It's important that you get it extra hot when it's a wigwag versus a clear. Clear moves pretty smoothly, no matter what. It's just nice like that. There's a lot that has been done to this glass at this point, so it's not necessarily just going to move smoothly at certain temperatures. So you get it nice and hot, and it will move a little bit better. The answer is almost always more heat. Whenever you're having a problem, try just more heat. Should be good. And we'll heat our bottom. Blow again. I'm actually going to do that. Oh. I'll do that one more time. Not totally necessary, but I want the base of this to go out just a little bit more. Yeah, that's better. And define our bottom. And then make our cup. Straighten our piece. Find where we want to pop our put our female piece on, and then pop a hole there. And we have the chamber for our full wigwag blue mini. So we'll give that a sec in the kiln and then go ahead and do the downstem. Oh, I'm using a longer one. Now I don't have to almost burn my hand when I put it in. Same as the last one, let gravity bend it, pop a hole on either side. So now, since the last one was clear, and this one is fully colored, at this stage, after I pop open that hole for the down stem, I actually have to tear away a bunch of clear. I didn't have to do that on the last one because it was already clear, so it was just going to melt in and look fine. It will not do so on this one. You'll have that line just like you would between individual wigwags if you don't tear it off. Same concept, bigger scale. So it'll look even worse. So tear off the clear and then reposition your stem. If you can't, I can see my stem in this one, but if you can't, you just kind of use this to make sure that you're going up at an angle and right in the center. And we'll grab our 14 millimeter joint. Make sure it's nice and straight to the piece. You can see how it looks. It's much larger than the other one that I did. And then we get to go all the way around the piece and make sure everything melts in all pretty. So the first of these mini concepts, like the mini as a concept, my dad actually came up with. And then I made a set of them. They were two-tone frit minis, which if I somehow run out of things to do, I'll make a two-tone frit mini. And I ended up selling them to, the first batch went to my friend Bob Sprung. He sells glass. And I ended up having one of them that had like a hole on the top of the female joint that I somehow just like missed entirely. And it was like the most ridiculous thing. So Bob sold and still sells glass for me for like 3 or 4 years now. But the first ever piece he got for me was like super defective. Obviously, I had to send him a new one right away, but it was pretty ridiculous. All right. So we'll toss that in the kiln, let it heat back up, and then we'll take it off and bend the neck. So next, we are going to start working on the hammer. I haven't made one of these in a while, so we're going to see how it goes. So I didn't manage to get everything stacked on this product. So I got to stack, but I don't have to stack a bunch. Downside is that for the main part of my chamber of my hammer, it is going to be just two really large wigwag sections. So getting the first one to condense down and be nice and centered and good on the tube is kind of difficult. But we'll manage. So this is the wigwag tubing that's basically, I just take a whole bunch of shorts, which are leftover pieces of glass. That aren't really the right size for a true tube. And I just stick a whole bunch of them together in a completely chaotic random pattern. And sometimes it looks really cool. Actually, it usually looks really cool. They're not great for like wigwag minis because they look a little too chaotic. But for a lot of stuff, they look really cool. So we're going to do this hammer out of all of that. And then we'll throw some other random cool bits that are leftovers. We're going to basically make this the leftovers piece. So we got the tube. The tube is made from leftover pieces of scrap color. And then I've got some leftover dichro from last night's, and by last night I mean Friday night's stream. So we'll probably throw some of that on the side. So it'll be an interesting piece. So you can see because of these wigwags are really pretty massive, they will take me a while to melt in, condense, and get to being nice and even. The downside to using random shorts for your tube is that a lot of times your tube is crazy uneven because you're using, all kinds of glass of all kinds of different densities, and none of it is in any kind of pattern. So it's not even like it'll disc because all of the densities on one set of colors. It'll do all kinds of weird stuff because all of the density is all over the place. It's trying to fold on me. So the point between the two is thinner than usual on this piece. Million reasons that could be. It just is. So when I heat that, the glass tries to like do this real quick, and it'll the whole thing will bend to the side, and if you let it touch, it will ruin your wigwag section. So you got to be careful when you're heating it not to let your top wigwag that you just attached kind of bend over sideways and touch the other wigwag that you're working. Once you've done that, I'm not saying it can't be fixed. I'm just saying it'll take longer to fix it than it would to just like make another wigwag, which is a pretty long time. So don't let it do that, or you're gonna have a bad time. So I think the structure of this piece is going to be pretty much just a cylinder. So I'm only going to increase the size of the bottom ever so slightly. And it's looking like if I do that, I won't have a huge chambered bubbler, but it should be enough to have a little bit of water and do its job. I'll let that cylinder be just a little bit smaller. Like that. All right, so now where the water is going to be, I want it to be just a little bit larger than the actual disc. So I'm going to heat the bottom and face it up and blow slightly. I don't want to change it too much, just a little bit. Yeah, just ever so slightly. So now I'm going to switch where my handle is. This is going to be the bottom of my piece. The rest of the work needs to be done up here. So I'm going to attach at the bottom and then take that piece off. Not even retake it off. I'm going to take it off for the first time. Pop a hole in the bottom, add our new handle. You want that handle to be sealed pretty good, but you want the hole to be pretty small, so when you later on when you mess with it, it's not going to be a lot of work. And then we'll take off this handle. And now I'm just going to clean up what's going to be the bowl piece, where the down stem is. I'm just going to even it out a little bit to make my life a little easier. So now it's a pretty even cylinder with a slightly fat butt. So I'm going to pop a hole. And this hole I actually want to be kind of big. Because the next step is to put a down stem in there. That's kind of hot. Let's not use that. So you want to make sure it's the right size to fit your down stem. And then you want to cut your down stem, remembering that you're going to be pushing it into this piece quite a bit. So it's actually usually going to be pretty small. If you create too large of a down stem, when you push it to the bowl, it's going to go all the way to the bottom, and it's going to end up clogging and being a mess. So it's better to have a slightly smaller down stem than you think you need. So we'll slide it in and then seal it to the wall. Tap off your handle. If it doesn't come off, melt it off. And then heat it up, and I actually usually stretch the hole to fit so that it seals all the way around pretty nicely. And you kind of press in. And then you shrink this down the same way you would if you had blown the hole too large in like a spoon or something until it's the right size. It's the right size. You're going to push your bowl in. You have to straighten your down tube after every push. Oops, I shrunk that down a little bit too much. So that your down stem stays nice and centered. And to make sure you got yourself a nice sized bowl. And then recenter your down stem. And now we're going to pop a hole up near the top here, and that's where we're going to connect this to the stem piece when we get there. Got a nice cylinder. That's where the pop hole is. You can't really see it, but the stem goes down to right about here, which is pretty much where we wanted it. Okay, so now we're going to switch back to the Mini. We're going to take it off of its stem, off of its blow tube, and bend the neck. Pull that off. Get rid of the clump. Pluck out the hole. Melt it flat. Center and resize. Woo! Almost tossed it. And then neck. Now these neck bends are a little bit harder than the clear neck bends. Take a little bit extra time to make sure that you get everything nice and evenly melted and heated all the way around the edge of this piece. You almost want it to move on its own. And then you just kind of guide it with your tungsten pick. Let it cool for a minute, and then get rid of the cold marks that are on the back. And there, you got your full Wigwag Mini. All right, so now we will move on to the stem of the hammer piece. Whew. So the stem's going to be a little bit smaller than the chamber. So I used a smaller wigwag to start, which also makes it easier to do the whole process because smaller wigwags are easier to start with. So same song and dance to start. Condense it down, blow it out, even everything, stack on the next one. And now we'll just spend a forever or two heating this up and getting this to melt in. Whew. I'm getting tired. It's getting hot. So I end up talking less. That and after like 2 hours and 15 minutes of talking, even I get slightly sick of hearing myself. All right, we're almost there. So once we've got this melted in, we're going to pull it down. We're going to pull pretty much the whole thing down as though it was all just one stem, because it is. And then we will attach this piece to our hammer piece and finish the hammer piece off. We're going to do some accoutrement on the hammer piece that I don't normally do. I'm going to do an extended carb cap or an extended carb hole and the diecraft stuff on the side. So hopefully the piece will look cool when I'm done. All right. So now we'll grab a handle and we'll pull this down. It's okay if there's a little chunk at the top where the handle is. I'm actually going to blow that out for a little bit of definition, so it looks nice. But we're focusing on making sure that the bottom, the rest of the thing is just one big stem. The whole thing nice and hot. And we'll pull it down. And I'm keeping my flame on that thick spot at the end because I actually want it to be pretty small as far as what my little blowout definition thingy is. So I want to make sure that the stem is long enough for this piece to be functional and proportioned properly. All right, that's pretty good. Gonna add the mouthpiece. Doesn't need to be super huge, just something that is defined. And then melt it down and pull out, condense it and pull out, just like you do on everything else. You can see certain concepts in glass are just universal across any kind of piece that you're making. How to do this mouthpiece, pretty universal. Okie doke. Take the handle off. We're going to heat this up, face it up, blow into it, get just a little bit of a ball, and then we'll pop the hole on the end. And that will be the stem that attaches to the chamber that we made a second ago. So now we got the stem of our piece, and the chamber is just going to attach right there. That cool for a sec? We'll pop a hole. Ream it out just a little bit. There you have it. We take our chamber that's been warming up, de-dust it, heat both the spots, and then we're going to touch them together and center them. You want this to be a nice 90-degree angle. Once that's solid, take off the tube for your chamber piece. and then clean that up. Basically just means get rid of the clear and make sure that the hole is gone. Like that. And then we're going to go and heat all around the stem to the neck joint, same as we would on a Mini. Just like a Mini, you got to let one piece cool before you do the next. Because in the next step, I'm going to be heating the bottom of this piece. I'm going to preheat it while I'm waiting for my under joint to cool. That way that piece underneath there never gets too cold. And so when I heat it later, it would crack. All right, almost got that melted in. Just one more spot to hit. All right, it's all set. So now I want to heat this back and bottom, and I'm going to set it down tail first and then push down, and that's going to define the bottom. It's important you do that properly, otherwise it won't sit. And it's a weird angle to do it, so you got to be a little bit careful. Pay attention to what you're doing. Now I'm going to pop a hole for the carb. I'm going to do an extended carb. So first we got to pop the hole. And then we're going to take a color. I'm going to use blue, if I can find the blue. And you're going to coil pot around the hole that you popped. and then heat that up, that bubble you made up like super hot. Just the bubble, you don't, or just the blue. You don't want to hit that clear hardly at all. And then we'll do a puff once to fill that blue with air. May have to do it a couple times because blue is a little dense. And then once the air is in there, pop it out. Straighten your hole. Widen as needed. Got a little extended carb there. Set that in the kiln. So now we're going to do our side decorations. But because this is a leftovers piece, I'm going to use my leftover Dichro blue for some of those side decorations. So because this is a disc, I want to gather it up, and I'm going to spiral it while I do that. And then gather it into a ball. I think I'm going to do that with the whole thing, or at least a good chunk of it, so I can put a few of these Dichro blue dots on the side in rapid succession. All right. Grab our hammer. Heat up the side there. And we're going to add our first one, which is going to be our largest. We'll do 3 total. And go ahead and melt those in. That is our little hammer bubbler. All right, so last 2 things we're going to do, take our spoon off of the handle. Bet you totally forgot I made this. There, I got that one. And now we'll take the bubbler off. We have bubbler. Whew. Okay, well, once again, I thought I planned enough projects, and I was wrong. So that's pretty much all I had scheduled and planned and everything for tonight. Thanks, everybody, for watching. As always, pictures of all these products will be up on my Instagram and my Facebook tomorrow morning, and then I will put together a little slideshow video for YouTube with all of these products and pictures of that. That'll go up on YouTube tomorrow. So if you guys want to see what the final product looked like, be sure to check that out. Follow me on Facebook at Vulcan Glass Art Studio. Follow me on Instagram at Vulcan Glass Art. And you already are probably subscribed and notified for everything here on YouTube. So thank you for that. And then if you want to support the channel further, you can head on over to Patreon at Vulcan Glass TV. Become one of my patrons, and I will happily be making you some cool stuff live on air. So most of these products, half of these products will be available. Other half were for clients already. So yeah, I guess that pretty much covers it. Thank you guys very much for watching.